We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners, Burke Britton Financial Partners. My guest today is a good mate. He's a presenter. He's a motivator. He's a retired plumber as well. And we'll explain as we go along why it's a pretty severe understatement to say that I'm pretty happy to see you today, mate. So Jason Nelson, thanks for coming and have a chat with me on our tiny little podcast here at Burke Britton.
It's my pleasure to be here, Jay.
Thanks, mate. Now, I don't want to give too much away. I thought what I like to do in these podcasts is get a bit of a backstory. Obviously, I know a little bit of your backstory. I've had a bit to do with you over the years, but for those listeners that haven't heard of you, if you're from Geelong, obviously you're probably going to know Jason, but for those out there that don't know you, mate, let's start with where you grew up.
So I was a Grovedale boy.
Yeah.
Grew up in Grovedale, went to Grovedale West Primary School, Grovedale Tech High, and then my mum saved up all the money she possibly could and sent me to Geelong College, which was a big change from Grovedale Tech High.
Were you born in Geelong?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
Our family go back 6 or 7 generations in Geelong, so we go way back.
Yeah, and so how was the shift from Grovedale Tech to college?
It was. I loved it. Like it was really good. I really enjoyed my time at Grovedale, and I really enjoyed my time at college. Like I'm just that sort of person. I enjoy the company of anyone as long as they're good people. I'm there.
That's a good caveat. As long as they're good people.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and there were a lot of really good people at both the schools I went to. So I was very fortunate. And getting to play cricket on turf at college, like for me as a mad cricketer, loved it.
So obviously sporting, I know, but a lot of people out there won't know that you're a sporting mad family. Where did your interest in sport come from originally? You're a mad cricketer, but were you also playing footy as a youngster?
Yeah.
Like when did you first start playing?
Yeah, so I played juniors at Newtown.
Yeah.
Boo. Yeah. So I played juniors at Newtown. I was one of the only guys, actually. We had a really rough trot trying to get juniors to play.
Yeah.
There were days we had 10 turn up to play back in the 80s. And I played there from 82 through till 88. And I think there was only myself and I think Grant Dunlop and maybe Andrew Rose were the only 3 that actually played all the way through.
Yeah. How old are you, Jay?
So I'm about 53.
53. You're about 53.
Yeah, I'm about to turn 53.
I'm about to turn 53.
Yeah. So I haven't played. So I played footy at Newtown in my junior sides. I had Nigel Austin played, Stewie Higgins, a few guys that most of you would have heard of. Justin O'Brien played there with me. Simon McDonald.
Yeah.
Like a lot of guys that are very well known around the place.
So interesting side note, and we might not have ever talked about this. I played at Newtown briefly for 1 year. So my first year was at Newtown under-13s under Mel McIntyre with
the toughest man in the world.
So Red was still the same size as he is now.
Yeah.
But another useless bit of information was that Clayton, my older brother, at some point, I think it must have been when there was difficulty getting the juniors together, there was a merger. There was I don't know whether it was a brief merger of the Bell Park and the Newtown junior side. So I've got a couple of photos of Clayton in Newtown garb at Newtown playing for a composite Newtown Bell Park team. So,
right.
I don't know whether that. So Clayton would be, he'd be 4 years older than me. So that would have made him 49. So and never know, might have crossed paths.
Yeah.
He probably spat on you or did something inappropriate in his time. But anyway, Newtown. Having spent a bit of time in Newtown, having lots of mates there, it's like Bell Park, who I'm involved with. It's a great community club.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I moved on and played. A few of my mates from school went and played at Amos, so I moved down to Amos.
Yep.
And that's, I guess, I've spent most of my local footy time with Amos, particularly with the juniors, over the last 10 years. So I had some amazing times down there with the boys. And I had a crop of boys that started at 9-year-old and went right through to under 19s. And I stayed with them all the way through.
Yep.
And it was magic. Like we won a few premierships along the way. And yeah, the bond between us all is like a life bond. I haven't seen a lot of the boys for a few years, but now that they're all grown up, it'd be great to catch up with them and have a beer with them and just to really celebrate the premierships that we won.
Yeah, and you still have a bit to do down at Amos?
Well, I did up until I got sick, and so and COVID. Like obviously, COVID ruined 2 years previous to me getting sick, and then so it's 3 years basically wiped out of my local footy life. That I just lost interest because there was just nothing happening. It was. Yeah, my son was playing a little bit down at Amos.
Yep.
He was struggling to get a game, but he was enjoying it. But he's given it away now. He had too many concussions, and it just wasn't worth it in the end.
Yeah.
So the old concussion blight is not a good thing on a young mind.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I definitely have a different view of football today than I did when I first played. I love footy, but I think differently about the impact on that, particularly on kids. But anyway, that's probably another podcast in its own right, mate.
Absolutely.
So back to your childhood and the move from Grovedale Tech through to college. You played some cricket there. You're pretty good at cricket by all accounts. Is that right? I was put it this way. I was a big hit for my size. Yeah.
So I plundered quite a few blokes and upset quite a few bowlers over the years. I had an ability to be able to hit a six off a first ball, and not many guys can do that. But I had the courage and the power to do it. And I remember there were days where I'd almost have kids in tears because I'd hit the ball that hard that if they tried to catch me, I'd virtually break their hands.
Yeah. Right.
But then one of my great memories from college was I rode my bike every day from Grovedale. So I used to ride from Grovedale all the way to Newtown with all my school gear and my cricket bag on the back of my mountain bike.
Oh, the good old days.
I had the strongest legs going around.
Imagine if you told your kids to do that today.
I know, absolutely. It's a good old world thing. No one would believe me. But they were good memories. I used to pick my cousins up. They lived in just off South Valley Road, and so we'd all ride. I'd ride from Grovey to South Valley Road, then we'd ride together.
It's a shame you don't see kids riding to school as much. Now, there's not even any bike racks up at Cardinia where the kids go to school. They're just not expecting that they're going to ride at all.
Exactly.
So you finished school. What did you do after school? Did you go to uni? What did you do?
I did. I went to uni for 3 months, believe it or not. I went and did education and at Deakin, but after 3 months I realised that it probably wasn't going to be for me. I would have been a really good teacher in the natural sense of the term. I had a great affinity with kids and I'm a good communicator, but the child psychology they started to put us through, it was like, this isn't for me. This is going backwards. This isn't going forward. So I just realised that it wasn't going to be my thing, and I got a phone call from Bluey Hampshire, who used to play for Geelong, played for Footscray and coached Footscray before Mick Malthouse. And he ran a successful plumbing business, and I'd done voluntary work experience with him over the years as a kid. And I got a call from him to say that I had a job with him if I was ready. So I ditched uni, went and worked for Bluey for 4 years, and he was a great boss. He was a great mentor. He was a hard man, but he was fair, and he taught me so much. And believe it or not, so the reason I'm sitting here with you today is that in 1990, Andrew Buse was working for Britain Financial.
Yep.
He was not doing he was like a work experience kid with him.
Andrew was.
Yeah. He did a 3-day course.
Yeah.
And they sold him this pack called AMPAC.
Yes, I remember.
Apparently it's the worst financial package that's ever been put together. Every time I see Busey, the first thing I say to him, how's the AMPAC stuff going? And then Busey wasn't there all that long, because Busey was a plumber as well.
Yes.
And so that's how so Bluey knew him through footy and through plumbing work as well. But in the end, I think Busey lasted with his AMPAC policies for about 3 months. And
So
then
he sold you an AMPAC policy.
Yeah,
and
he
then
did.
And he got the ass.
I think Damien Egberts and I were the only two guys in Geelong that bought AMPAC. And then he was out of there. He realised that we just saw his dust as he ran down the road and got out of there. But then Lindsay Heath took over as my financial advisor with Bruce Britton.
Yep.
And Lindsay was amazing, just such a great man and a real steadying influence, I guess, on my life at that time when I was a young bloke and I just needed to be put in the right direction. Then Mark Britton took over, and after Lindsay had retired and looked after me for quite some time. And then I became involved with you and your dad.
Yeah, which is around 2010. Yeah. Another interesting side note, well, it might be for me, but not for any of the listeners. Busey's brother Stephen was my PE teacher.
Yeah, right.
And we used to sit behind the goals when Ray Sarcevic was kicking hundreds of goals in local footy, and Busey and Ray were like arch nemesis. Yeah, but it was great fun. They're great childhood memories of just giving Busey lip. He was our teacher, but on the weekend we could give him shit and we could swear at him. So it was pretty cool. So you did your apprenticeship. You stayed with Bluey Hampshire for how long before?
I did 4 years.
Okay.
So did my 4 years, and then I was qualified as a journeyman plumber. Went and did some work with an air conditioning company. I worked in a few restaurants and a few different things, and then I went and I got a job at Coca-Cola.
Okay.
And so that sort of came out of the blue, and then I ended up doing that for 4 years.
What were you doing at Coke? Plumbing?
No.
Okay.
No, I was a rep. So I ended
selling sugar water to kids.
So I ended up getting what was probably the best job going around in this area. So I looked after every pub from Wye River through to Altona.
Okay.
With Coke, and I was with Coke for 4 years. At the start, I was looking after supermarkets, and then
what time frame was this? Like what years?
So this was 1994 to 1998.
Okay.
Yeah, and then 1990 after they kept on restructuring, and I got sick of it because I was into customer service and looking after my clients, and yet they were trying to pull that back, and I could see that they were just getting annoyed, and they were such good people, and I couldn't handle it. So I got back into plumbing again, worked for a couple of people and did some subcontracting, and then I started my own business.
What year did you start your own business?
In 2000, yeah.
Okay. Did you ever deliver Coke to the Gold Diggers Arms Hotel?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I used to get there. So that was my Friday run. So I'd get there at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and there'd either be either Wayne Baker,
Darby Johnson,
or Paul, or Dennis, like one of them was always there. So I'd catch up with one of each of them and do their Coke order. They used to have a machine called a Vega. The Vega was the one like they had it. It was like a big box, and it just had a few little. It didn't have the gun on it. You just have to put your drink underneath it. And
what's bizarre, and this is always the case when I'm talking to people, even people that I know in Geelong and around Geelong, is that there's so many connections in Geelong, and it's just ridiculous. And when you look at someone's history, like Mum worked at the Diggers. Mum worked in the posh bar on the right hand side, and she got me a gig there working in the public bar when Nigel and Dennis had the pub, and Nigel was a fitness instructor out at Norlane Waterworld, and he worked with Clayton because Clayton used to go out there. Anyway, I got a gig at the Diggers, so you and I probably crossed paths many times, mate, before we formally crossed paths in a business sense. But that's Geelong through and through, isn't it?
It's interesting because one of our oldest family friends, Andrew Routley, actually runs the Diggers now.
Yeah.
And we'll get into it in a minute, but obviously I've been so sick over the last year, and just sort of. It's like the second coming of Jason Nelson now. So I'm just sort of coming back to life and loving everything that I do. And 24 of my best mates who had formed a WhatsApp group for me while I was sick had a lunch for me at the Diggers 2 Fridays ago.
Yeah.
And I was just so excited. Like, I can't explain, because I haven't seen any, like, I've only seen probably about 5 of my mates the whole time I've been sick, because I was immunocompromised the whole time, and I could be killed at any stage by any bug. And so I was sort of like the bubble boy. And then that day I decided, to hell with it, I just need to catch up with my mates.
Yeah.
And they had organised a lunch 2 months earlier, and I decided to crash their party. And it was an amazing day. It was so good, so good.
That's awesome, mate. Now we've probably given enough sort of hints away at one of the major reasons why we're catching up today. Maybe if I go back just a little bit to, I think it was probably a text message or a phone call that I got from you, which came with some pretty devastating news. Do you want to maybe talk about what that news was and how you felt at that time? So
yeah. So remember it clearly. So Friday, the 13th of May, 2022, and I got a call at 6:30 in the morning from pathology to say, Jace, you need to go straight to the ED at Geelong Hospital. We're waiting for you. We've got a haematology nurse waiting for you. We've got a room for you. You are really not well, and you need to admit yourself straight away. Just don't stop. Just come straight in. And I remember on the morning, my wife had called in sick to work because she had a cold, and it was during COVID, so it was just really hard. And I'd been sick, so I'd had a really bad chest infection for like 4 weeks, and I hadn't been sick since Geelong had won the 2007 premiership. That's how healthy and fit.
that's how you measure time, mate, in between premierships.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was the first of them, and so I've been one of all my mates. I've probably been one of the fittest and healthiest of the lot, and so and then I went in there. I had one of the nurses took some blood from me again in the hospital just to double check everything, and then I had 6 haematologists walk in the room, and haematologists are like an entourage. They come in sixes. They've all marched into the room, all stood around me, and Steve Young, the head haematologist on the day, just looked me in the eyes and he said, Jason, your life's about to change forever. We've diagnosed you with a disease called AML, which is a form of leukemia, acute myeloid leukemia. It's really aggressive. It's got an 8-week cycle. You're in week 5. If you had to come in week 8, you'd be dead. And so it was a bit of a jolt, but at the same time, I'm always prepared for anything in life. And I knew that, well, financially with you, you'll be able to vouch for this, that I've always maintained that if ever my day of reckoning came, that I wanted to be able to stare everyone in the eye and go, everything's going to be fine for my family, which I had done to the nth degree, to the point of almost arguing with you at times to up it rather than down it, which isn't normally not normally what happens between a client and a financial advisor. But so I had always made sure that was right. And so that, I guess, gave me the strength to then prioritise what was going to be really important to me in getting through everything. And I think for me, I've seen a lot of people get sick, and the hardest thing for any of us to deal with is when you get closed out. So I decided right there and right then, as Steve was reading me the riot act, that I was going to make this an amazing journey for everybody to go on with me, to help support me, because I knew that I was going to be in for a hell of a ride. I had no idea what, but I just knew that it was not going to be pleasant. But I needed everyone in my life to come with me, and I needed to feed them as well with information about what I was going through, so that they could actually send me the love that I needed to get through everything. And so I created, it was like a wave of love, I guess you would say, and support in positive forms. So I didn't want anyone coming in crying. I told everyone to come in and have a laugh with me, and I decorated my room completely with photos of my family and my friends, and had Jeremy, the religious guy at the hospital, I found out, one of the nurses tipped me off that
Was this at St John's?
No, this is at University of Geelong.
Okay, yeah.
So, Jeremy is sensational on the guitar, and he has got a great voice, and he can also teach. So good mate Mark Blunt gave me his spare guitar from People's Poets, and Jeremy said about teaching me how to play guitar. I must admit, I didn't get too far with playing the guitar, but the spiritual side of me trying to learn how to play the guitar was just, I was so excited when I saw Jeremy's feet come under because he had a curtain on your door, and I recognised everyone's shoes. And so when I saw Jeremy's shoes come through the door, I went to a next level. I was so excited. And he'd come in, and if I was having a bad day, and I had a lot of bad days, he'd just sit there and play Pearl Jam for me, or he'd play Chili Peppers, or whatever I wanted. He'd just play it, and I'd just sit in the corner and either laugh along with him or cry, depending on how the day was going. Because there's days, as positive as I was, there were days where you just have everything taken away. Everything, so when you get leukemia, you have everything taken away from you, because you've got to be pretty much in isolation, because you can catch anything. Like, you lose all your immunity. So when once you start getting the chemo, what happens is you lose all your neutrophils, which are the white blood cells that actually save your life. So I was in a situation where I was immunocompromised, where I could catch anything from anyone, and it would then multiply out in my body like nothing else. And if I got a cold, it could kill me. And so everything was just everything was a big deal. And so I just needed to set about distracting myself as much as I possibly could to give myself the mindset to be able to get through what was facing me. And obviously, as you can imagine, telling my mum and telling my dad and telling my brothers and telling my best friends who are like my brothers, that was so hard. And I kept myself together, because I knew that none of them would. And so I was able to get myself into a zone where I was just very forthright. I told them exactly what was going on at all times, and we worked our way through it, and everyone gave me great support. Like the amount of messages that I had. So the other thing that I had to do when Steve gave me the diagnosis was I had to shut my plumbing business down. So I had, and as you know, I've done work for you, I had 250 clients that I looked after, and I'd had a relationship with them for over 20 years. And I'd got to the stage where I was so proud of what I was doing, because I was now working third generations of families. So to have worked for mum and dad, and then worked for the kids, and then worked for their kids, that's the stage I'd just sort of got to. And so I'd seen all these kids grow up, and now I was doing their bathrooms for them, and it was just like the ultimate, the ultimate tick to be told, you're now getting to work for the third generation of our family. And so I would walk into these families' homes and just feel like I was part of the family. And so to walk away from that, it was like the fact that I couldn't do plumbing work anymore. And obviously the issue with the plumbing side of things is that dust, bacteria, the stress of what I put myself through, because I was always in demand and trying to get to everything, and I couldn't, but I did my best. I looked after you. You were one of my last hurrahs, I think.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. My irrigation's working beautifully now. Good. Thanks for hooking that up.
No, absolutely. So I guess there was just so much going on, but it was a matter of trying to just find things to distract myself. My friends and family certainly did that for me, and then I created other things as well around me that particularly the WhatsApp group that my mates formed, and also my brother-in-law helped me form what's called a lifeblood group, where we decided that we're going to start trying to get people to donate blood. Because I didn't realise this, but when you're a leukemia patient, you require a lot of blood, red blood, and also platelets. So up until this point in time, I've received 26 bags of red blood in transfusion and 7 bags of platelets. So platelets are the ones so if you cut yourself, they stop you from bleeding out to death, basically. So when you're in that neutropenic stage after your chemo, what ends up happening is you lose all your platelets as well. So if you were to cut yourself,
you essentially become
hemophiliac.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. That's exactly what happens to you. So so over the course of my treatment, I've had the equivalent of one of those big, those big rubbery buckets at Bunnings that hold 45 litres. That's how much chemo has been pumped through me. So I guess I lost all my brain function at one stage. I couldn't, my wife had to take 8 months off work to look after me. I was a total invalid. I couldn't really walk. I shivered. I shook. There was shivering and then there was shaking. They were two completely different things. My eyes couldn't stop watering. I couldn't have a shower without fainting. So I'd have to sit down and have a glass of lemonade halfway between a shower to stop me from passing out. I just constant vomiting, my bowels, you just lose total. So you lose.
And so this is almost all a result of the chemicals, the chemo that they're throwing into you.
So the chemo, but also cyclosporin is the drug that. So the only way I could survive, and the only reason I'm here with you today, is that I was lucky enough. There was a 27-year-old lady somewhere in the world that gave me her stem cells. So basically, they tap into they put like a corkscrew into your bone, and they suck the stem cells out, and then they put them into me. And they said to me, look, you're so fit and healthy, it should take 3 months to come good after this. But it actually took 8. So I was lucky enough that leukemia, you all hear about Leukemia Foundation. What Leukemia Foundation does is for people like me is they give us accommodation. So they've got a block of units, like nice townhouses over the road from Peter Mac and Royal Melbourne. And one of the stipulations is if you're going to have a stem cell transplant, you have to live at Leukemia Foundation or within that block, because you need to be everything changes within seconds in that situation that you're in. So once you're out of the hospital and you're just an outpatient at Peter Mac, you're very vulnerable for a long period of time. And they said to me 3 months, but it ended up being 8 months. And I was like a really strong patient. So it just gives you an idea of what some people go through that aren't in good nick when they start the whole process. So I was just so lucky that my wife, Sarah, she took 8 months off work to look after me, and she was amazing. And when Sarah couldn't be there, my mum came and looked, my dear mum, who you know very well,
Yep.
Came and looked after me as well, and it was just amazing. And they never made a fuss. They were seeing the strongest person they knew in just such fragile form. I just wasn't me. I didn't look like me. I had bloated. I just looked horrible. I had no features on my face. I was just blobby sort of, and but they never made a fuss about it. They just got on with doing what they had to do for me, making me food or helping me get up or whatever. And there were days where I just couldn't get out of bed. I just physically could not. It's I guess it's probably for chronic fatigue people, I guess it's probably the worst chronic fatigue you could have. You just can't get up. It's just too hard. But at the same time, I was continually driven to get back because I love life so much. I love life as much as anyone I've ever met. So for me, there was no plan B. There was only plan A, and I wanted to spend my life seeing my kids grow up. My kids are 20 and 22, and my resolve was that I just wanted to be there for them. I've always told them that my purpose in being here on this planet is to look after them and to guide them through life, and so I wanted to make sure that I could fulfill that. And I knew that if things went badly and pear-shaped, which they did a few times, and I never got much warning, that I knew that I had brothers and brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws and my wife and my mum and my dad that would obviously help guide my kids. But there was a stage where we just didn't know that was going to happen.
Can you tell us about some of those times where it went pear-shaped, it went bad during your treatment?
So I remember very clearly the worst day was 25th of June. So Saturday, the 25th of June, I woke up at about 2:30 in the morning. I felt really bad, and I called my nurse in, Tom, and Tom came in, and I knew straight away that I was in a bit of strife because I had this thing called a Hickman in my chest. So the Hickman's great because they take all your blood out of it, and they also
It's like
pump
like a venous catheter.
Yeah, exactly. It goes straight in above your pec.
Yeah.
So and I had mine for a year, and it was amazing. But when you're unwell, the first thing they had to do was make sure that the Hickman wasn't the cause of why you were feeling unwell. So then they'd have to take bloods out of your arm. And when you've had a lot of chemo, like you and I right now would have really good veins, but once you've had chemo, your veins just dissipate. There's just nothing there. And so they'd be pricking away at this thing and saying, sorry, there's nothing there. But anyway, they finally got the sample they needed, but it was a Saturday, so pathology couldn't do any, Saturday midnight sort of thing. So there was nothing available. So
whereabouts were you?
I was at Geelong University Hospital at this stage. So they took it away to pathology. First thing in the morning, once pathology came on board, they realised that I had what was called a negative gut infection. So that was something from inside me. So I didn't catch it from somebody. It was actually inside. It was just my body doing its job. But because I had no neutrophils, I was totally what they call neutropenic. So because of chemo, I was at zero. So I had no white blood cells, no neutrophils, no platelets, no nothing.
No defense mechanism.
I was just like, I was a sitting duck.
Yeah.
And so what happened, at about 8 o'clock in the morning, my temperature went to 41, and I'm 36. So that's 5 degrees above what my body's meant to be. So I was cooking, but they had to put, the irony of it is they had to put 7 blankets on me to stop me shaking. And then I was so lucky that my haematologist that had been looking after me for really well for the 3 months, Adam Facey, was on that Saturday morning. And so he knew me so well, and when he walked in the room, I could tell, like, I read people really well. And just the look in his eyes when he looked at me, and I thought, I'm in strife here. I need to really grit my teeth and hope for the best.
He didn't have a very good poker face that day.
No, because we'd become like you become like mates with the doctors and nurses. They're some amazing people. I had some of them might be listening, and I just had the best relationships with them. And they used to come and just visit me and say good day, because the vibe in the room was pretty good. So it was always a place that I guess they like to come and visit. But this morning, Adam had to do a couple of, I guess, they gave me antibiotics for everything they could possibly give me, and they were pumping. I'd never seen them before, but they bring in these bottles, glass bottles of like adrenaline, and I could see them just siphoning out into me. And at one stage, I had 10 doctors in the room. So I had 4 ICU doctors, and I had the 6 haematologists in there as well. And they were trying to decide what was going to happen, because I was losing consciousness and I couldn't stay with it. And I knew that if I went under, then they wouldn't know whether or not the antibiotics and penicillin was actually working on me. So I was desperately clinging on, and at the same time I'd had to get my nurse to ring Sarah to come in, because Sarah was coming in, but I wanted her to be warned about exactly what she was going to walk into. And it was pretty confronting when she walked in the room, because I hadn't got upset much, but I got upset. I wasn't upset for myself, but I was upset because I could just see like what she was looking at. And she'd lost her dad to cancer when he was really young, and her mum had passed away not all that long ago, just before, I think in 2019. And so she's such a trooper. I always say she's no good with crumbs on the floor, and she's no good with mouse traps, but if you've got a real life crisis, Sarah's the one you want in your court. And she was amazing. She sat there with me and just held my hand and played music for me and just tried to divert me from what I was actually feeling at the time.
Now, I'm sure Sarah's, by the sounds of it, extremely stoic in that moment. Have you since talked to her about how she actually did feel coming in and seeing you in the state you were, and what went through her head?
Yeah, I know exactly what was like. So she was thinking the worst, But she knew that I was going to have a good crack at trying. She knows I'm determined, and so she knew that I was going to have as good a crack as anyone at getting through what I had to get through. So she and I've spoken to her a lot in recent times, both privately and in front of other people, about how remarkable she was. She's a remarkable woman. She doesn't give herself enough credit sometimes for just how strong she is when she needs to be strong. And so the one thing that I think through all of this, I think she'll realise that just what an amazing person she actually really is, and the qualities that she brings that she might have been a bit understated about before. But I think she realises now what she's just gone through and how amazing she's been for me. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned it a few times about you had a plan A, no plan B, and I was worried for you, but I could tell that you were resolutely focused on getting to a positive outcome. But probably a bit like you, I could tell that you're probably more worried about the people around you than yourself. And similarly, I was thinking, I wonder how people like your siblings and your mum, who I know well, and Sarah, were going to deal with that. Broadly speaking, again, you've had a chance to have a chat with them publicly, by the sounds of it, and privately. How have they all coped seeing you? Well, not only your strength, but also the worry that they carry. And again, it's a weird human quality, isn't it, that you have a tendency to worry. Certain people worry more about others than themselves, and I think that's definitely a quality of yours.
Well, and that was the thing, was that I knew that if I was taken, that I'd just be gone, and I wouldn't have to deal with all the mess later. But I knew that everyone else was going to have to deal with all of that, and so I guess I knew that I had amazing people. Like, everyone around me was amazing. Like, everyone contributed to me in different ways, helping me however they possibly could, whether it was a text message or just I didn't take. So that was one of the things I did. I banned phone calls. I didn't want to take phone calls from anybody. It didn't matter who they were. I wasn't taking phone calls. I just said, text me. If I'm ready, I'll give you a call, or I'll do FaceTime with you. I'll do something, but it needs to be on my terms, because I'm fighting for my life here, and I can't be interrupted by phone calls that might go for 45 minutes that I can't finish. Yeah. So I need to be totally in control of how this is going to all play out. And so that was one of the things that I did, and I'd recommend anyone that was in my situation to do the same thing, because you don't want to be talking to, what ends up happening is you'll end up talking to relatives, having to tell them the same story over and over and over again. I figure if you send them a text message, if they don't understand it the first time, they can read the bloody text.
Yeah.
And make sure, because there was a lot of technical information that I was trying to give out to people and trying to translate it into layman's terms so they'd understand exactly where I was at. Yeah. And I didn't want to be having phone calls that were just wasted phone calls, because no one would really, unless I'm medically trained, they weren't going to understand what I was trying to explain to them. So
yeah. It's interesting hearing you say that it was a conscious decision, because, as someone that, is a friend, and obviously you have been part of this business for a long time as a client, you're always, you're wanting to help, but you also, it's like whenever anyone's going through something difficult, you want to make sure that the balance between support and sort of over-imposing yourself on them is in check. But I suppose it's great advice to anyone out there in a similar situation to say, hey, you've got to do things on your terms, and it's okay. The people around you will just have to, they'll have to fit in. In most instances, people are very happy to. They just want to know that they can offer the support, and and you can then choose to take it up where you actually need it at the time.
Absolutely. And so what I did, so I compensated for that a lot. So what I did was, I skirted on this before about Lifeblood. So brother-in-law Pete set me up with this Lifeblood group, and it actually, it grew massively. So we were originally thinking that, you know, we might get 20 to 50 people that we knew to donate blood through lifeblood at the blood bank. Anyway, we got it started, and then I started every single person I spoke to. Thank you. Every single person I spoke to, I basically said to them, I'm doing this lifeblood thing where I want you to donate blood if you're able to. And it actually took on a life of itself. And then I then came out and said, after we had, I think we'd got 150 people to donate, I said, I'm now aiming to get 1,000. And so what I started doing was I started doing videos. So every time I got a transfusion, which was very frequently, I'd do a short video. I'd tell everyone how I was. So it'd be me. I'd film myself. I'd just say, hi, I'm just having transfusion number 15. I had a really good day today and my neutrophil levels are going in the right direction and I'm feeling a lot better. Great to see you, and I'll speak soon. And I kept doing that. And so basically what happened was the lifeblood thing became two things. It became a way for me. So we had a lifeblood Facebook group for me. It was called, so my team is called Team Long Live Jace Nelson. So I thought it was a great, I'd signed off on I'd written a letter to a friend and I'd signed off and I said, Long Live Jace Nelson at the end of it.
That's going to be an acronym that sticks for a while, mate. LLJN.
Yeah. And so Team Long Live Jace Nelson has now, we're approaching 800 donors.
Oh, wow.
Which is, so just to put it into proportion, we're up there with Deakin University, Bowen Health, the Australian Army and the Commonwealth Bank as far as donors. And we've had 116 first-time blood donors in our group, which is like off the charts. So I've been made an ambassador for Lifeblood. So if you go into the blood bank and donate, there's a couple of pictures of a sickly-looking Jace Nelson with a Panama hat on as the poster boy. And I was fortunate enough last week, I was invited by Lifeblood to speak at a conference, and I was on a panel. And I spoke on a panel with Jess, who's a girl from Geelong that has had a liver transplant, and Catherine, whose little boy, William, needs 1 bag of plasma every day for the rest of his life to be able to be around. And so the three of us sat on a panel and we spoke, and when I went in there, I thought I was going to talk to 6 or 7 executives. It was the whole national executive that we got to speak to. And so I guess I delivered a powerful message similar to the message that I've been giving today. And just to, I guess my message is to everyone that I'm all about having resilience, about having total perspective about what's important, and that your family and friends are just so important to everything in our lives. And without the family and friends, what's the point? There is no point. So basically my message is always towards that, and I hope to do that professionally moving forward.
Which is the lead into Motivate South Pacific, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's obviously, that's the ambition to do public speaking, do motivational speaking, and have a message. Does it predate your illness? Is it something you'd thought about previously and you wanted to do, or has this been the sole impetus for exploring Motivate South Pacific?
A dream from 6 years ago. Okay. So it came about very humbly. My daughter Chloe was asking me about what she was going to do with she was engaging me in conversation about what she wanted to do with the rest of her life, and she was telling me how she'd love to be in fashion design, which is exactly where she's headed at the moment. And then at the end of that conversation, so she would have been in about year 10, I reckon, at school back at Cardinia, and she said to me, "Dad, what are you going to do?" And I said, "Sweetheart, I'd love to be in public speaking." I said, "I'd just love to be able to be out there and spread a message." I knew I've always been able to communicate and I've always had a message, but I guess it wasn't until I got really sick that I guess I had another layer to what I was able to actually put out there for people so that I could. The great thing is now that when I tell my story, I'm very brutally honest about everything that happens and nothing's off limits. So I take everyone on a ride. They get to feel what I felt as much as possible, and it's quite graphic. But at the end of the day, if I then have question time at the end, they're then able to come back and ask me how I dealt with this or how I dealt with that. And I find that it's really good. I spoke up at Geelong College the other week to the boarders. So I spoke to a group of 90 students up there and teachers. And it was amazing because I spoke for about 20 minutes, but then I had 15 minutes of question time from kids. Like they were really really curious. And the way I'd presented it to them, I don't think they'd had people that were willing to open themselves up as much as I did to them. And I spoke with them. I didn't speak at them. And I told them some great stories, and I gave them a bit of bait along the way to ask questions about later. And yeah, so we had some amazing moments. So I had some amazing moments while I was sick, where at one stage my mates on WhatsApp had decided they were going to have a competition, and the competition was that they had to get me the best get well message they could possibly get me, but they weren't allowed to pay for it, right? And so we started off we got like Joel Selwood and Tom Stewart and Jeremy Cameron, and it was really cool. But then my brother Rom actually, through a few contacts internationally, did a bit of a Hail Mary, and we got Carl Lewis.
the 100-metre gold medalist.
The greatest athlete of the 80s, Carl Lewis. And Carl Lewis has come on, and he was amped, like just totally amped.
How did that? There's got to be a backstory there about how through connections he's managed to get Carl Lewis.
So Rom's an author, and he's got connections with publications as well. Yeah. So he's an online publisher as well. So what happened was he had a shared contact with somebody that was also doing a book for Carl Lewis. And so he was able to, Rom didn't think it was going to happen, but he thought he'd be waiting for at least a month. It came through like 2 days later. And Carl got in touch with him and wanted to know all the family's names. So Carl's reeled off everyone's name. But the funniest thing was that poor Rom, so his name's Romney, Romney.
Yeah, oops.
But all his life, everyone gets him wrong. They always call him either Ron or Rod.
Yeah.
And Carl Lewis, this great moment, he's gone, Jace, and to your brother Ron, and Rom's gone to all this trouble to get it organised, and we were laughing so much. But Carl's going, Jace, you are going to survive. You are going to survive, and all this stuff. And it was so amazing. And we thought, that's as good as it's going to get. And then one of my really good mates in Sydney, Gav, is mates with Sachin Tendulkar.
Oh, wow.
And I got a 2-minute chat from Sachin on his couch, and it was just unbelievable. It was like all the boys, we were all in tears listening to it. And at the very end he said, I want to meet you, which
I was going to tear up now.
I was so pumped, like so pumped. And then
the little master.
Yeah. And then he said to me, this is advice that I've been given a lot in my life by some very influential and wise people, that not all storms come to disrupt, some come to clear our path. And for me, that was a massive moment for me, because I still remember 3 days after I was diagnosed, the nurses let me go home because I was bawling my eyes out because I hadn't got to say goodbye to my dogs, and I didn't know if I'd ever get to see them again. So they let me go home. They disconnected me from everything. I was allowed to go home for 2 hours. In that 2 hours, I went and cuddled my dogs and cried with my dogs. I organised for my dad and my brother to come and have a beer on the front veranda with me because I didn't know if I'd ever get to do it again. And as I was packing my bag in the wardrobe, Sarah came in, and we both looked at each other and we both had tears in our eyes, because it was like, that feeling of going back to school after school summer holidays and you don't want to go back. Well, this was like tenfold. I just didn't want to go back because I didn't know that I'd ever get to come back to my beautiful home that I put my heart and soul into our house, and so it affected me a lot. My house is everything to me because I've put everything, like all the best years of my life, I basically battled with buckets of dirt and rock and stuff to make it what it is. And Sarah just looked at me and she said, I think this might actually help you. Like, this might help you get to where you want to get to with your speaking. And it was a big moment. And then for Sachin to say that to me, it was just like, this is it. And so from that moment on, I have just been totally focused. And so with when I'm speaking, I've actually called it facing the storm, and it's to say thanks to Sachin with his comments about the storm. And so when I speak, I have a picture of me behind me, and it's got a storm over the cliff of Janjark at Bird Rock in the background with facing the storm written on it. And so
have you made that video? Is that a public video, or have you kept that private?
No. Well, I've got it as a demo, so I've just done it so I can give that to you.
The Sachin video.
Oh yeah, so that's private.
Okay.
So
Cool.
So what happened with a lot of the people, there was so that was amazing. So I also got them from massive INXS fan. Got one from Kirk Pengilly and Lane Beachley sitting on the couch, and they gave me 3 minutes.
Right,
Hugh Jackman from New York, but the stipulation was that these stay within this private WhatsApp group, and so we've stuck to that. And so I've never shown any of them or anything like that. But the boys,
there's going to be people who want to get into that WhatsApp group, mate.
I know. Absolutely, it was incredible. But for me, for my mental health, it was amazing because on my really bad days, I was able to sit there and just look back and have a chat to Sachin. Basically, I'd watch Sachin again, or I'd watch Carl Lewis again, or I'd watch Lane and Kirk or Hugh or whoever they were. And the great thing is, virtually all of them have said to me, "I'd love to catch up." So there's going to be some amazing. I'd say most of it will happen in Sydney.
Good luck trying to coordinate that and have them all there at the same time.
Well, my best mate's got a good boat in Sydney, so we're hoping that we can coordinate to have a bit of a get together. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah, mate, that's amazing. That what was the quote again from Sachin?
Yeah, so not all storms come to disrupt; some come to clear our path. And yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, it reminds me of something that stuck in my head during some difficulty in my life was that, crisis creates opportunity, and the obstacle is the way.
Yes.
The obstacle in front of you is the direction you need to head.
That's right.
And it's I suppose it's very easy to talk about that theoretically, and it's great to see it's great to see a wonderful quote, but to actually live it and experience it. And I think the thing that stands out for me, which I probably haven't told you enough or at all, is just how much of an inspiration your battle and your attitude has been. Like it's friggin' unbelievable, mate. Like it does. It fills people who listen to you, and even just like I enjoy getting your text messages, mate. I like reaching out and checking in on you, and your positivity and the focus you had on making this a positive experience, not only for yourself but for the people around you, is an absolute inspiration. And I said at the start, it's an absolute understatement for me to be happy to have you here, because I've worked in oncology before. And when I hear the diagnosis that you've got, not only my feelings but also my knowledge and understanding of the condition, the cancer that you had, it worried me. And it's great to have you here, mate. It's great to have you here. Yeah.
It's amazing, like, and going through all of that, I've got like this new chamber in my brain now, and so
I think that's a little bit about that neuroplasticity you were talking about, which was, I suppose things like the guitar, so important to actually use a different part of your brain, but you're forced into a situation where you have to use a different part of your brain. Your brain's functioning on a different level.
Yeah, exactly. And no one can keep up with me now. Like I've got this beamer bonnet about things, and when I want to do them, I'm just doing stuff. And it's been amazing I love my history. I always have. And I've been doing all this family history stuff and been uncovering amazing things in the like I've made things happen that I just never in my wildest dreams thought would happen. And so over the last month or so, a whole lot of things have come together with a whole heap of, like I'm talking I had 5 different projects running at once doing family history, and it's just been incredible. And I've just, as I say, I've got this tunnel vision and I'm just on a path now, and I'm just doing it. I'm just doing what I need to do to, I guess, to make the world a better place if I possibly can. And as I said, when I speak to a group of kids, like up at college the other night, like if I give them 5 different messages and they all walk away, and they retain one thing that I've said to them, I'm so happy, because it's just given them. So many kids at the moment have got so many problems in their lives and struggle so much to deal with them. But if you can give them one small tool to deal with it, and those keys to unlock that, because I think everybody's got what it takes to have resilience. Everyone's got what it takes to have perspective, and everyone's got what it takes to have friendship. But you just have to actually commit yourself to wanting to be that.
I think what is, I don't know whether it's a shame or it's just human nature, that sometimes it takes something significant, a crisis, to actually kick people into action. Yeah. And what, the message, I've got 5 kids and I'm
beautiful. I love your family. They're so cute. I just love your kids.
But trying to give them that message of resilience and being able to deal with adversity. I mean, the last thing we want is for our kids to be dealing with significant adversity that you've dealt with. But at the same time, we need to give them education and messages about how to deal with it, because you're talking to kids in school, they have limited life experience. And I remember having significant people come and talk at school, and you're right, like there's things there's people that I remember that came and spoke at school. Some I paid zero attention to, and others where I remember one thing. Like I remember a moment, a comment, something that stuck with me that has formed the basis of who I am today.
Yeah.
And that's where I think what you're doing in terms of sharing your message, because not everyone is in a position to, not everyone's willing to, not everyone has the vocabulary and the ability to want to speak to people about it. So, mate, it's hats off to you to be willing to and to want to go out and talk to people and share your message, because it's a pretty special one.
Thank you.
Mate, we've been, would you believe, I know you and I can talk underwater with a mouthful of marbles. We've been going a little bit over an hour, which is totally cool. I wanted to, we know that I've got a financial planning business, and I did not want this to be a financial planning discussion at all, but one of the things I think it's worth touching on, and you mentioned before we started on air, was just the financial impact. Like, it'd be remiss of us not to talk about the financial impact that having a significant health concern or condition can have on a family, whether it be death or disability or a traumatic event or a cancer. I am at pains when I'm talking to clients to explain the future risk and the potential, but like we spoke about earlier, sometimes it's this sort of nebulous idea of, what could possibly happen in the future and the impact it might have on our life. And it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't make sense in reality when we're fit and healthy and our kids are fit and healthy and we've got a house and, we've got a mortgage, we've got a small business that's successful. We don't project forward and go, but what if? And a lot of the time it's because we don't want to talk about it.
No.
We don't want to think about it. I remember doing our wills, Kari and I doing our wills and powers of attorney, and Kari being super upset and not wanting to do it. And I said, Kari, this is super important stuff, and we it's housekeeping. We have to do it, but once it's done, it gives us that certainty, that bubble wrap of protection. It doesn't stop us getting crook. It doesn't stop us from dying. But what it does do is it actually makes sure that, like you have said it a number of times, and it's the way I feel as well, that we're here for our kids and our family. And I want to make sure that myself and our clients have got that layer of protection around them. So can I just get you to just talk briefly about the importance of being financially secure as you were dealing with all of this in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. And whether you brought it up or not, I was going to bring it up because I'm not in the industry at all, but I'm a huge advocate for having your insurance. I can still remember in the hospital looking at Riley, my son. He was sitting by my side. He was my person the first day I was diagnosed, and just thinking how important it is to have the insurances in place for my family. And so since I was a young guy, at about 30, I'd got, so I had income protection insurance, I had trauma insurance, and I also had good life insurance.
And an Ampax.
And which we had ditched by that stage. I think the Ampac had a little bit of life in it. I think it had like a $20,000 life policy or something.
Pretty expensive too.
Yeah. But so I'll just go through it really briefly in layman's terms that everyone will understand. So the income protection insurance, what happens is, most of you probably aren't aware, but if you get really sick at work, your boss is only really there to have to look after you for your sick leave. He doesn't. If you're working as a plumber, for instance, or a chippy for somebody, and you find that, well, either you have a really bad car crash or you have something like what I got, some form of cancer or a heart condition or whatever, your boss isn't entitled to he doesn't have to pay you for the rest of your life. He might be a really good boss and pay you for 6 months, but after that, you're on your own. And so you go from either earning, maybe as a chippy or a plumber working for yourself, you might earn $1,500 a week or $2,000 a week if you're doing well. And if you then have to go on to government benefits, which are going to be very hard to get onto, and you're getting $500 a week, your lifestyle goes backwards by $1,500 a week, which is incomprehensible. So it means that you lose your house, you lose everything. So I had income protection insurance, and I'd had that, as I say, from the time of 30. I'd also had and this one was massive, trauma insurance. So what trauma insurance does is that they will pay you out a tax-free lump sum. It's an expensive insurance to have, but believe me, when you get told that you could die in 3 weeks, you want to have it, because you need to be totally focused on getting better. And if you've got mortgage stress, that will take care of that for you. So with mine, I was able to, it meant that debt that I had, that I was actually able to pay off debt. And so it meant that I could relax again. And I guess finally, the life insurance is also just such a massive thing, because if you're lying there and you don't know that you're going to survive, you want to know that your wife and kids are going to be okay for good. And if that's how I leave my legacy in this world, well, that was going to be it. And I knew that they were going to be okay if I did go, because I just didn't know if I was going to survive. As I'd said to you in a couple of phone calls that we had, I don't know what what's in store for me. I just have to go day by day or minute by minute and hope that I get through. So all those three things, I can't, they're all expensive and they will all cost you like an overseas holiday every year. But I can tell you right now, if you do have your moment of reckoning where you're facing a big black tunnel and you don't know what's going to happen next, you want to know that you have got that support, and you don't want to be leaning on your friends. Like, we've all got great friends that can help us out, but that's not what you want. You want to be, most of us are proud people that want to be able to sustain ourselves. And so I was always determined to be able to do that. And so the great thing is with this insurance, it's meant that I haven't had to lean on friends financially to get myself and Sarah and the kids through what we've been trying to get through.
Yeah, that you mentioned a couple of things there about sort of the lifestyle that you have, and I've said it multiple times probably to you in the past as well, but like financial planning is not really financial planning at all. It's lifestyle planning, it's life planning, and thinking about how things will actually impact your life. It's not necessarily about how things will be financially, but when you do have a situation like you've experienced, and unfortunately I've been on the other end of, or had clients with situations that weren't as financially prepared as you, and the outcome is horrific. Like the need to have, first of all, to have a loss of income that you can't replace. The second one being that you need funds for medical expenses and you have to start liquidating assets or leaning on friends, or it is not a position that we want people in. And to your point around cost and the like, all I'd say to anyone out there, not in a similar situation to you, because by the time you're in a situation that you've been in, it's kind of too late for insurances. This is the other thing that we need to be thinking about this well and truly in advance. But just go and speak to someone. Just have the conversation. Talk to your loved one about the importance of having the basics of your insurances and your estate planning together, and then just go and see someone. Go and have a conversation with someone that you trust. If you don't know someone, then talk to a friend who's had a good relationship or a good experience with someone. Chat with Jason Nelson; he'll give you a good financial advisor to go and see.
Absolutely,
mate. Is there anything else that we haven't covered off on today that you wanted to? You're wearing a hat. It's not that sunny in here today. You want to give a shout out to another friend and another organisation that's doing great things in Geelong?
Absolutely. So my cousin Penny Stanley, she runs an organisation called Zoe's Fight, and so for the last, we started back about 5 years ago, and we had the first of Zoe's Balls. And Zoe's Ball was held, unfortunately, it was actually down at Barwon Edge, and amazing setup. And I've heard that they've only closed down in the last few weeks. And we had an amazing event there, and that got everything started. And I was fortunate enough I actually met Renee Enright on the night, and we hosted the night, and it was amazing. I've only ever met Renee twice. Both times have been hosting Zoe's Ball, and so the last one we had that I was able to do was out at Mount Anita State, and it was like a grand ball. It was amazing. It was just the best feeling in the room. Everyone was really excited, and it was just pre-COVID, so it was one of our last hurrahs. Anyway, obviously the ball got cancelled the last few years because of that. Last year, I was ready to come back and host, but I'd been sick, but I was desperately trying to get better. This is before I was diagnosed. 2 weeks before I was meant to host, I got diagnosed with AML, and I was actually at the stage where I was coming down off my chemo, and I was so sick that I just wasn't me at all. And luckily, one of my really good mates, Andy Mathers, who was a very capable man, took over and hosted the night for me. That was one of my great stresses when I got sick, that I couldn't actually host the ball. But so this year it's going to be at the Geelong Footy Club. I think it's on the 14th of October. And so we basically we celebrate Zoe's fight. So Zoe would have been, I think, 11. She had just the worst brain cancer for a little girl to have to go through, and it was such a tragic thing. She was a beautiful child. And so we all as a family try and do everything we can to try and help, and it's an amazing night. Like, we try and create an atmosphere of just fun and have a great auction, great silent auction, and we try and keep everyone entertained all night and everyone gets dressed up. It's a great do. So looking forward to it in October.
It's great, mate. We actually had Penny on the podcast a few weeks ago. I haven't actually released that podcast, but I'll get that out and make sure that we get lots and lots of attention around the ball in October.
Yes.
Yeah. Mate, thanks again for jumping on and having a chat with me today. This is probably the longest conversation you and I have had for a year or so.
Yeah.
It's been great to hear you talk about the last 12, 18 months. Again, I've said it too many times, maybe not enough. It's great to have you here, mate, and proud of everything that you've done, and thanks for sharing it with us today.
It's great to be back, Jay.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Cheers. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Burke Britton FP, or Google Burke Britton Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility, do your homework, ask questions, and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britton Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS licence number 232706.